December 1964. I was 16 and a junior in high school. My uncle had invited my family to spend Christmas with his family in Atlanta, where they had moved some years earlier to make a fortune in the real estate boom there. What an exciting adventure for my family. We drove from our Iowa farm, traveling entirely on two-lane roads, since this was before the network of freeways and four-lane highways was established. As we got further south into Mississippi and Alabama, we passed through small towns where I began to see poverty like I never could have imagined. I saw whole communities of shacks, unpainted and in great disrepair, with kids in rags sitting on front porches. All of them were black. I could hardly comprehend it all. We stayed with my uncle's family for almost a week. One night, he took us out to a very popular, expensive restaurant called something like Mammy's Cabin. It was located on the grounds of a former plantation, and the setting was beautiful. The tables were outside under trees that were hung with strings of lights, white tablecloths, very elegant. These tables were arranged around the former slave cabins, which had been repurposed as the restaurant's kitchens. All of the patrons were white, and all of the staff and servers were black. The black women were dressed as Aunt Jemimas, with plain dresses and kerchiefs tied around their heads. The men were in patched overalls, wearing straw hats. All were barefoot. The menu was presented at the tables by children. Pickaninnies, they were called. In our case, a 9 or 10-year-old boy arrived at our table with his little head stuck through a sandwich board on which was written the menu in chalk. His job was to recite the menu in a high-pitched, exaggerated Southern black dialect that we could hardly understand. We thought it was so funny and clever and so entertaining. I hadn't thought about this moment in my life for many years, but when I began contemplating possible subjects for this essay, this memory pushed its way out of the deep recesses of my brain and demanded to be heard. Since then, I've been thinking a lot about that restaurant experience and trying to imagine what it must have been like to go to work every day, put on those costumes, and become a caricature of the slaves your ancestors were. To entertain white patrons on the doorsteps of former slave cabins. How humiliating and demeaning. While we no longer popularize such egregious and outlandish examples of performative racism, I do believe that there are minefields of humiliations and microaggressions that Black people must cope with on a daily basis. I try to imagine what it must be like for Black people to have to navigate through our white world. Will I be stopped by police for driving through a white neighborhood on my way to work? Will I be seen as a suspicious shopper and followed as I do my grocery shopping? Who will clutch their purse tighter as I walk by? Maybe I'm a professor at the university, or an actor at the Guthrie, or a security guard at the Federal Reserve Bank. It doesn't matter. I'm still Black, and that trumps everything. By now, we've all seen pictures of the walls that Israel built to segregate themselves from their darker-skinned neighbors. Palestinians are forced to daily navigate a system of pernicious and haphazard laws and conditions that dehumanize them and destroy hope. These Israeli walls are built with concrete, steel, and razor wire. Here in this country, the walls we have built to constrain our dark-skinned neighbors are invisible, but walls just the same. Our dark-skinned neighbors are confronted with passing through invisible checkpoints and guard stations on a daily basis. I think, if that were my life, I would be seething with anger and resentment. How do we begin to tear down the walls and repair the damage? I don't have good answers, but I know that we must begin the process by recognizing and dismantling the structural racism that supports our invisible walls. This I believe.